So it's, yeah.
It's come a long,
Way.
long way.
Yeah.
And you can really see the dependent arising of how the Dharma grows in the world, and the concerted effort of many people. It's so interesting because a lot of people you could really see, it's a wonderful look at karma, that there are people that came here and made such a big impression. We only saw them once. You know, they came, they contributed, they put their electricity in the walls, they did this, they did that. Then we never saw them again. Then, a few months later, somebody else would come and do something very, very special that we needed. And then they'd go away, we wouldn't see them again. It was like all these little karmic ripenings would make would build this place one person at a time. It was quite stunning.
Yeah. And, when people ask me for the long-term vision, I would always say it depends on who comes here. Yeah. It isn't controlled by me. It depends on who comes here, what their interests are, what their specialities are.
But it was very clear that after some time, there was an energy of going forward here that you could feel. It was not, you couldn't stop it, I don't think. You know, just the, I don't know what you call that, but like the energy of everybody, it just was going in this direction from, your vision of it, really. And then it just started going and building and getting bigger.
And it started to slowly transform from being struggling with the house impression to start building the Abbey energy in the place. When we had more people in robes, when we had people staying longer and committing here for some time, you could feel the energy shift to being more serious, more grounded in monastic life. It still was a struggle in the early years until we got to a tipping point. I don't know when that would be, but it definitely, Venerable was really holding the space for a very long time, holding the monastic energy here for a long time.
When did you meet Pat and Joe Simpson?
Okay, so Pat and Joe, it was an older couple that used to live kind of around the corner. And I started doing classes at Create, because we wanted to get integrated into the Newport community, because these people this is a rather conservative area. They had no idea what Buddhists were, and, you go into town looking like this, and so we started to Create. I was teaching just basic meditation, talking about compassion, how to deal with anger. And Pat and Joe came to one of those the series I was giving, as did Naomi and Ryder. That's how we met them. And Pat had worked at the paper factory for some time, and he was older, he had a lot of life experience. And so when it became evident that we were outgrowing Ananda, because how can you have your office and your bedroom and a guest sleeping all in the same room? Yeah. And so we had to do something, because we needed more space. So Pat actually sat us down, and he started asking us questions, and what do you need, and what's your envision of how it's going to grow. And he helped us see that the first building we needed to build, well, actually the first building we did was the writing studio. Yeah. But the first larger building we needed was a residence for the nuns. And so that's how Gautami got built.
He said it wasn't a Buddha hall. He said, you need to find a place for your community to live in.
Yeah.
And we had, in the beginning years, Venerable was in Venerable Sompton's office. All right, so she's trying to write books. She's answering the phone. She's trying to, get this place going. You got the phone, you got the doorbell, you got people cooking, there's no space for her to do any of what she needs to do. So that's why in 2005, as the little community and the FOSA at large said, we need to build Venerable her own place. So that's how the writing studio has the only permitted compost toilet in the whole county in there. that we got her, we built that with just friends and volunteer support
Yeah.
to get her some space and some privacy, which she's been still trying to find. 19 years later, she's still trying to find some space. But it was just becoming too much for, because there were people starting to come, and the place was Grand Central Station for the first years. Everything happened in that building.
Yeah. Actually, it was interesting that the first guest we had, because I had arranged already to go to India that winter. I didn't know we were buying the place then. So when I came back, the man who was staying here, he left. And then one young man and his mom came to visit. And uh, they kind of ate everything. you know, and, uh, and when they left, it was like, you know, I think they got a little bit of groceries at the end. I think the mom did, but yeah, they because they stayed for a week, and most of the food was gone. But we said it at the beginning that we're only going to eat the food that's offered to us, kind of going back to the model that the Buddha set up, where the Sangha is dependent on the lay people. And so people said to me, you're going to starve out there in the middle of nowhere if you don't go shopping and just wait for people to come and bring you food. And I said, well, let's try. Okay. So I think it was that first spring. Yeah. Do you remember that?
Well, I
Yeah.
moved here in May,
Yeah.
and then, but the carrot thing that happened the winter of 2003.
Mm-hmm. The
No,
carrot.
when you only had, they forgot, Tracy, they
Okay.
forgot to bring a food offering, and you had carrots in the garden that Vicky had left in the garden.
Yeah.
That story. But anyway, which one are you talking about?
Okay. So I'll tell the story, and then you can figure out when it was.
Okay.
So, yeah. So somebody from the Spokesman Review in the Spokane newspaper wanted to interview us and explain what the Abbey was. So they came up, and I talked about, us only eating the food that was offered. And, I just explained it as part of how we run it. And we don't charge people to stay here, and everything's done by donation. And so that's great. She wrote an article, she printed it. It got printed in the Spokesman Review. And the day after it was printed, this lady who we did not know drives up with an SUV stuffed to the gills with food.
First EML 2004. Venerable Choki was here, Alaya was here, Zilpa was here. She brought it filled the entire kitchen.
Yeah. And it was just amazing. I mean, she didn't know us at all. She read the article and she said, I want to offer food to these people. And we were just flabbergasted, like, wow, amazing. So you can see, I mean, a similar thing happened last week when I was in town going for my PT. A man stopped me on the street and said, "Are you from the Abbey?" Or he didn't say Abbey. Are you from that place? He recognized that. And he said, some years ago, I gave you guys some pears. I have a pear orchard. Can I donate some more pears this year? And of course, I said yes. And I gave him a card. And just a few days ago, he came with several boxes of, organic, homegrown pears from his own orchard, to donate. You don't know who we are, what we're doing, but just seeing the kindness of people.
Because the first summer we had cows coming up here to visit.
Oh, yes.
When the meditation hall was being built, the fence would break down here on the properties, and we'd wake up in the morning with a whole little herd of cows just kind of grazing around the meditation hall. But then Tom Eagle, whose cows they were, he'd come up with his little ATV, but he'd bring us 100-pound bags of potatoes, which we'd pop in the old root cellar, which is underneath the Buddha house out there. And he did that, I think, for a few summers. He'd bring us 100 pounds of potatoes. He didn't know who we were. He was a kind of a character, just like we were, and his cows kept coming for a while, so we saw him a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. So we could go on telling stories, but I'm sure you're eager to have some of that food that was donated to us. So, for you to know a little bit of the history. Also, if I could take this time just to explain, because I was thinking, Geshe-la, that you may be wondering why we're doing Chinese chanting and why we have statues of Kuan Yin, Avalokiteshvara in the Chinese form. And, it's not typical of a Tibetan monastery. So I thought it might be good to explain that. So, I had gone in 1986 to take the Bhikshuni ordination in Taiwan. And I had also, when I lived in Seattle before that, no, after 86, I became very good friends with one Chinese nun. And so we started with some other nuns there doing sojung together. And then in 96, I helped to organize this program in Bodh Gaya called Life as a Western Buddhist Nun. And so we invited Geshe Nawang Thupten from the Hamburg Center. And we also invited Venerable Wu Yin, who was my friend's teacher, to give. And so over time, we began to have a very good relationship with the Chinese nuns. It started with a Bhikshuni ordination, and then as people were ordaining here, taking the Getzel and Gelokma ordinations here at the Abbey, and then going to Taiwan for the Gelongma or Bhikshuni ordination, and then the Chinese nuns coming here because they had to help us translate the ordination ceremonies from Chinese into English. Then a very close relationship evolved with them, and and then in 2018, we had Living as a Western Buddhist Nun, another Vinaya program here, and Venerable Wu Yin, the Chinese Bhikshuni, came and taught. And so, people started giving us Kuan Yin statues. Some people were Chinese Buddhists, some people were just regular people who had gotten a statue at some garage sale. They thought it was beautiful. They didn't know what it was, but they donated it here. Okay. Yeah. And then, was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I was asked to be part of the ordaining Sangha at a Bhikshuni ordination in Taiwan. So just many connections like that. And the Chinese monks and nuns being very receptive to helping us in Vinaya. Yeah, because we weren't able to take the full ordination in the Tibetan tradition. They don't have that lineage. So that's why we went to Taiwan to get it. And so a very nice relationship started to form that I'm hoping, as it develops in time, will bring the two traditions together in terms of really understanding each other and eliminating a lot of the wrong views about each other's traditions that have accumulated over centuries because people haven't known people from those other traditions. Yeah. So that's how it all kind of happened. Yeah. But we're very clear in terms of our Dharma practice. We follow the Tibetan tradition, specifically Je-Tsongkhapa. In terms of Vinaya, then we're following the Dharma-Guptaka tradition, which has the Bhikshuni and Bhikshu lineage, of course. and that lineage is mostly found in Taiwan, mainland China, Korea, Vietnam.
I just wanted to say last thing here is that in the early years, even I think after the first 2 years that Venerable was here, Venerable Jendi would bring a van of friends from the monastery in Seattle. You know, Venerable was really holding this space, and Venerable Jendi in the first years would come with her supporters. She'd come to just bring encouragement and bring enthusiasm, and she brought Venerable Chen Chang, she brought a number of Venerable Minja. They taught us how to sing the Heart Sutra around that oak table in Ananda in the first few years. So they really were encouraging and nourishing this young community from their side, because they've seen the history of the Vinaya and how it sustains the Dharma. They wanted to make sure of its success, and so they really committed emotionally, financially, spiritually to the growing of this community. You can really see it.
Yeah.
And so much they showed us how monastics comport themselves, how they walk through space, it was so beautiful. It's like they almost walked above the floor, all of a sudden here they are. You'd hear nothing, and here they are. And it was very beautiful.
Yeah, and then the chanting melodies that they use in Chinese chanting, we thought were really beautiful, and it was easy to put English words into other melodies because the Tibetan melodies are basically based on 7-syllable verses or 9-syllable verses, and to put English into those melodies is difficult because the syllables don't match. But with the Chinese tunes, where you could elongate some things and go quickly over others, it became easier to make melodies in English. Yeah.